Hello, welcome to the podcast, AnonX. We are jumping straight into a deep dive today, exploring a legend that is both deeply rooted in culture and continues to manifest in some pretty unsettling ways.
The Skinwalker.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic.
We've gone through a stack of your sources, historical accounts, cultural beliefs, eyewitness reports, even, psychological theories, and yes, discussions of one very famous ranch.
It's quite a body of material we've got here. It really covers the gamut from the foundational beliefs and cultural contexts right through to these chilling accounts and modern interpretations.
And even attempts to explain the phenomena associated with the legend.
Exactly.
So our mission today is to pull out the most compelling nuggets from this material, to guide you through what a Skinwalker truly is, where the legend comes from, and maybe why it continues to resonate so strongly, especially in certain parts of the American West.
Sounds good. Where should we start?
Let's start unpacking this. At the heart of it all, what is a Skinwalker in Navajo culture, or as the Dine call themselves? Right, well, in Dine culture, a Skinwalker, or naaldlooshii, which translates roughly to he who walks on all fours, is a type of witch.
Oh, okay. A witch.
But not just any witch. The sources are really clear on this. They're described as the most feared, the most malevolent, and frankly, the most dangerous kind.
Wow.
These are individuals believed to possess and deliberately misuse dark spiritual powers, specifically to harm others and sort of violate the sacred ways of the community.
So this is much more than just a simple boogeyman story then. It's really embedded deep within their spiritual framework.
Oh, absolutely. Navajo spirituality recognizes powerful forces, both for good and for ill. You have medicine men who use knowledge for healing and balance, operating within what they call hozo, or walking in beauty.
Mm-hmm.
Skinwalkers, though, they follow what's called the witchery way, and that's explicitly the opposite of hozo. It's all about gaining power through forbidden, really malevolent means, purely for selfish and harmful purposes.
And I imagine this association with just pure malevolence leads to a pretty significant cultural taboo, right? Like, it's not something you just casually chat about.
Precisely. That's a crucial aspect highlighted in the sources, this deep taboo around speaking openly about skinwalkers within Navajo communities.
Why is that?
Well, it's not just superstition. There's a strong belief that simply mentioning them, talking about them, can actually attract their attention.
Really?
Yeah, it can invite harm or somehow give them power. It just underscores how real and present the fear of these beings is within the culture.
Okay, that definitely makes sense. Which naturally leads us to the pretty unsettling question. How, according to these sources, does someone become such a terrifying figure? It's not something you inherit, is it?
No, definitely not something you're born into. Becoming a skinwalker is described as a very deliberate and dark choice. It requires participating in secret, truly heinous acts.
Yeah.
Acts that involve violating the most profound social norms and tribal taboos imaginable.
And there's a specific kind of horrific initiation rite mentioned in the sources.
Yes, this is one of the darkest details that comes up repeatedly. To gain the full power, an individual has to undergo a secret initiation ritual. And a key element often cited is the requirement to kill a close family member.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes it's even specified as a sibling. It's seen as the ultimate sacrifice to, solidify their turn towards this dark power.
That act alone is just chilling. The sources also mention a connection to the dead in their practices, using bodies.
Yeah, witches practicing this witchery way are said to use human corpses and bones in their rituals, maybe for their tools or ingredients.
Ingredients for what?
Well, some accounts mention the creation of something called corpse poison. It's described as this potent and really malevolent substance, supposedly made from the ground-up remains of humans or animals.
Oh my God.
And it's used to curse people or inflict severe harm or illness. Some sources even say the younger the source the remains, the more powerful the poison is believed to be.
That's incredibly dark. Is this power only accessible to men, or can women become skinwalkers too?
Well, many accounts do describe skinwalkers as predominantly male, but the sources also note that females can become them.
Okay.
Though some specific lore might suggest it's usually older women or perhaps childless women. But the potential for this kind of darkness isn't exclusively tied to one gender.
Are there any theories mentioned about how this whole witchery way itself might have started? Where did it come from?
The sources offer a couple of possibilities, yeah. One idea is that the practice actually originated with medicine men who became corrupted somehow.
Ah, like they twisted their knowledge.
Exactly, twisting their sacred knowledge for personal gain and harm. Another theory reaches back even further, connecting it to the Navajo emergence story itself.
The creation story.
Yeah, suggesting that maybe first man and first woman learned some secret, potentially dark mysteries from the gods way back then, and that sort of laid the groundwork for witchcraft later on.
Okay, so now we get into the abilities, the stuff that really makes them so terrifying in the legends. What's the primary thing a skinwalker can do?
The most famous ability, of course, is shapeshifting, changing into animals.
Right.
But it's important to note, unlike, say, a werewolf who's transformed by a curse or the full moon or something,
Yeah.
the skinwalker's transformation is voluntary. They choose their animal form,
And what kind of animals?
often predatory ones. Things like coyotes, wolves, foxes, bears, owls, or cougars. They seem to choose strategically based on the abilities they need at that moment: speed, strength, stealth, for hunting or maybe just evading capture.
And is that where the name skinwalker comes from?
Exactly. They're called skinwalkers because of the belief that they literally wear the skin or the pelt of the animal they transform into.
Wow, okay.
And this is actually the root of that strong cultural taboo in Navajo culture against wearing the pelts of predatory animals. It's seen as mimicking the skinwalker's practice, basically.
Gotcha. So beyond just changing shape, what else are they supposedly capable of? The sources list quite a few pretty unsettling powers.
Oh, the list is extensive and definitely unnerving. Sources say they possess supernatural speed, like they can cover huge distances incredibly quickly.
Faster than normal animals.
Much faster, yeah. They can also mimic voices, human voices, or animal sounds, apparently to lure people or deceive them.
That's creepy.
And a particularly frightening ability mentioned is mind control. By locking eyes with someone, they can reportedly force them to do their bidding.
Seriously, mind control.
That's what some accounts claim. They're also said to be able to read minds, cast curses from afar, cause illness or even death, destroy property remotely.
It's quite the list.
It is. Their control isn't just limited to their own form either. They can reportedly command nocturnal creatures like owls and wolves, and some stories even say they can call up the spirits of the dead or reanimate corpses.
Okay, that's a lot. So if they can blend in or take animal form, what are the signs? How would you even spot one or no one is nearby?
Well, that's part of what makes them so feared. They're incredibly difficult to detect. But there are supposed signs. In human form, a telltale sign often mentioned is their eyes.
Their eyes. How so?
Described as looking distinctly like animal eyes. And conversely, in animal form, their eyes might appear strangely human, or maybe glow with this unnatural penetrating light, often described as yellow or kind of coal red.
Yeah.
People who claim to have seen them also report this disturbing mix of human and animal characteristics in their appearance. Like maybe they look like an animal but move in a weirdly human way, or sometimes they're seen naked or in tattered clothes underneath the animal skin.
And what about their behavior? Any specific eerie actions associated with them?
Yes, accounts frequently mention unsettling behaviors that seem designed just to terrorize people. Things like rapping on windows and doors in the middle of the night, or making scraping noises just outside the house.
Just to instill fear.
Seems like it. To signal their presence and freak people out.
Given all these powers and their stealth, protecting yourself sounds incredibly difficult.
Yeah. It really is. The sources emphasize they're nearly impossible to catch or get rid of by, conventional means. But Navajo lore does suggest specific, powerful countermeasures.
Like what?
Well, one approach is to seek help from a very powerful shaman, a medicine man who knows the right ceremonies and incantations. The idea is they might be able to force the skinwalker to turn its dark magic back on itself.
Turn it back on them. Okay.
Another method described, a more physical one, involves using weapons specially prepared with white ash, like bullets or knives dipped in it.
White ash.
Yeah. But even then, the sources state the attack has to hit a specific vulnerable spot, typically the neck or maybe the hand. It suggests even these powerful beings might have particular weaknesses.
Right. It definitely makes sense that such a, malevolent figure is often blamed when things go wrong in the community.
Oh, absolutely. In Navajo culture, skinwalkers are frequently blamed for unexplained misfortunes. If there's a sudden illness, an unexpected death, crop failure, marriage troubles, or just persistent bad luck with no obvious cause.
The skinwalker might be behind it.
Exactly. A skinwalker might be suspected of cursing the individual or the family. It kind of provides an explanation for unpredictable suffering,
And this deep-seated fear has actually had significant historical impact, hasn't it? You mentioned the witch purge.
It has, yeah. The pervasive fear of skinwalkers definitely played a role in historical events like the Navajo witch purge of 1878.
What happened then?
Well, during that period, accusations of witchcraft led to severe consequences for those suspected, including, tragically, killings.
Wow.
And it's important to remember the context. This purge occurred during a time of immense hardship for the Navajo people, particularly following the Long Walk, their forced removal and terrible suffering at the hands of the U.S. government.
So the trauma might be linked.
While the stress and trauma of that period are sometimes linked by historians and cultural observers to an increase in witchcraft accusations and the purges that followed, fear and suspicion naturally rise during times of crisis.
That makes a grim kind of sense. Now, if we talk about skinwalkers in a more modern context, there's one location that inevitably comes up: Skinwalker Ranch.
Ah, yes. Skinwalker Ranch, formerly known as the Sherman Ranch, located in the Uinta Basin of Utah. It borders the Uinta and Ouray Indian Reservation, and yeah, it's gained international notoriety as this sort of hotspot for unexplained phenomena.
And the strangeness there isn't just a recent thing, is it? It goes back further.
Accounts from the sources suggest reports of strange occurrences on or around that specific piece of land date back over 100 years.
Really? What kind of things?
Oh, the reported phenomena are incredibly diverse. UFO sightings, bizarre creatures, livestock mutilations, glowing orbs, even things like poltergeist-type activity. It's a real mix.
And it was the Sherman family's experiences in the 90s that really brought it into the mainstream spotlight for a lot of people, wasn't it?
Yes, definitely. Terry and Gwen Sherman owned the ranch in the mid-90s, and they reported this terrifying series of events starting around 1996.
What do they report?
They spoke of encountering a large, wolf-like creature that seemed completely unfazed by bullets, finding strange tracks that would just abruptly vanish, witnessing UFOs and crop circles, experiencing really disturbing cattle mutilations, hearing strange voices, detecting an odd chemical smell.
Just constant weirdness.
Pretty much. The phenomena were apparently so intense and frequent that they ended up selling the ranch after only about 30 months. They just couldn't take it anymore.
And that's when it caught the attention of Robert Bigelow, the billionaire, interested in paranormal research.
Right. Bigelow purchased the ranch in '96. His organization, NIDSI, the National Institute for Discovery Science, set up round-the-clock surveillance and intensive investigation there for several years.
Did they find anything?
Well, during their time, they also reported strange sightings. Things like weird yellow-eyed animals, similar to what the Shermans described. More baffling cattle mutilations, often found completely drained of blood, and frequent, unexplained equipment malfunctions.
But no smoking gun.
Despite all the resources, NIDSI apparently found no definitive physical evidence to explain it all by the time Bigelow sold the property in 2016.
And then Brandon Fugal took over,
Yep.
and it became the subject of that popular TV series on the History Channel.
Exactly. Fugal purchased it in 2016 and allowed the History Channel team access, and they've continued to report similar baffling events. Persistent equipment failures, strange health effects on researchers like radiation burns, ongoing UFO sightings, and even explorations of what they claim are underground anomalies or caves.
Wow.
Fugal himself has publicly called it the most unusual property he's ever owned.
It's probably worth mentioning the Ute perspective on the ranch as is presented in the sources. They're the tribe whose reservation borders the land, right?
Yes, and the sources do mention the Ute tribe's historical relationship with the Navajo, which apparently include periods of conflict.
But how does that relate to the ranch?
Well, according to some accounts referenced, there's a belief among some Ute people that the Navajo may have actually cursed that specific land during those conflicts, maybe leaving shapeshifters or other malevolent entities there.
As a curse.
Potentially. And this is offered as one reason why some Utes reportedly avoid the ranch area even today. It provides this other cultural lens on the location's really dark reputation.
Okay, so with such a bizarre array of reported phenomena concentrated at the ranch, the sources naturally explore various theories trying to explain what on earth might be going on there.
They certainly do. The sources present a whole range of possibilities, trying to make sense of everything from, lights in the sky to creature sightings and all the equipment failures.
What are some of the main explanations that the material considers?
Well, on the more, let's say, unconventional end, you have theories involving extraterrestrial visitors.
UFOs.
Right, citing the UFO reports, the strange lights, and the sometimes unexplained precision of those cattle mutilations. Related to that is the idea of interdimensional visitors.
Like from another dimension.
Yeah, suggesting the possibility that the phenomena originate from beings or maybe energies accessing our reality from somewhere else, perhaps through some kind of portal activity that the lights might hint at.
Are there more grounded, sort of scientific-style explanations proposed in the sources?
Yes, some sources explore potential geophysical processes. They suggest that maybe unique geological factors in the Uinta Basin, perhaps tectonic stress, seismic activity, or unusual geomagnetic fields, could potentially cause weird environmental effects or maybe even induce hallucinations in witnesses.
Hallucinations. Interesting. What else?
There's also the possibility floated of a government cover-up or secret testing. The theory that these bizarre events could somehow be related to clandestine military activities or experimental weapons programs being conducted in that remote Utah area.
Okay. What about trying to explain the creature sightings or the livestock issues more directly?
Well, environmental pollution from nearby oil and gas drilling is another theory mentioned, suggested as a potential cause for some of the livestock deaths, although it doesn't really easily explain the weird mutilations or lack of blood.
Right. And then, of course, there's always the possibility that it's not real at all.
Right. The hoax or exaggeration theory. This suggests that maybe some of the events, perhaps starting with the Shermans, were fabricated or at least embellished for attention or maybe financial gain.
But doesn't that run counter to them selling it relatively cheaply?
That's the counter-argument, the sources note, yeah. The Shermans sold the ranch for a relatively low price, and crucially, the strange reports have continued under subsequent owners and independent investigators. That definitely challenges the idea that it's purely a hoax originating with them.
Okay. Stepping away from the ranch specifically for a moment, the Skinwalker legend itself has clearly broken into mainstream culture. It appears in media quite a bit now.
It really has. The legend pops up in movies, books, TV shows, including, obviously, the series focused on Skinwalker Ranch itself. But it's probably important to differentiate, as the sources do, between this kind of cultural dissemination and the flood of often, frankly, staged or sensationalized Skinwalker sightings that you see online now. Those frequently bear very little resemblance to the original Navajo beliefs.
And this popularity has, unfortunately perhaps, brought up some significant concerns about cultural sensitivity and appropriation.
This is a really critical point highlighted in the sources, yes. There's considerable controversy surrounding non-Native people using or altering the Skinwalker legend, especially for entertainment or profit.
Like the J.K. Rowling thing?
That's a prime example. J.K. Rowling's inclusion of skinwalkers in her expanded Harry Potter universe drew widespread criticism from Native communities for what they saw as simplifying and misrepresenting a deeply held, very sensitive belief. Many contemporary Navajo people feel strongly, as the sources indicate, that the Skinwalker legend is intrinsically tied to their living culture, their traditions, their spiritual beliefs. It's not really seen as an open source concept for outsiders to just reinterpret or commodify however they want.
Are there any examples mentioned of the legend being handled more respectfully outside the culture?
The novelist Tony Hillerman is often cited as a more positive example. He wrote mystery novels featuring Navajo characters and culture, including one actually titled Skinwalkers, and he was recognized by the Navajo Nation for his generally respectful portrayal.
Okay.
And while the 2002 film adaptation of his book did have some Native American involvement in its production, the broader discussion really remains about understanding and respecting the cultural origins and the deep sensitivity of the legend. Interestingly, one source even mentions a Navajo individual using the name for a sauce company, framing it as an attempt to educate and shed light on the culture in a different way. So it shows that perspectives on sharing aspects of the culture can vary even within the community itself.
That's interesting. Okay, finally, the sources also delve into some potential psychological explanations, looking at the origins or maybe the persistence of the Skinwalker concept from a different angle.
Yes, this offers a very different lens indeed. One source, for instance, connects the Skinwalker legend to the psychological condition known as clinical lycanthropy.
Clinical lycanthropy. What exactly is that in this context?
Well, according to the source, it's a rare psychological syndrome where individuals develop this delusional belief that they're transforming into, or maybe have already transformed into, an animal.
Like a werewolf delusion.
Sort of, but the animal varies, and this condition is often linked psychologically to feelings of intense guilt, sometimes over a perceived sin or some wrongdoing. Interestingly, the specific animal involved in the delusion often aligns with culturally feared animals in the patient's own environment.
Okay, so how does that potentially relate to the Skinwalker legend?
Well, the speculation, as presented in the source, is that the behaviors of individuals suffering from such delusions, perhaps behaviors exacerbated during periods of immense stress, guilt, or depression, like the profound suffering experienced during the Long Walk era, could have played a role in the formation, or at least the solidification, of the Skinwalker legend.
So people saw this behavior and interpreted it through their existing beliefs.
Possibly. Well-meaning spiritual leaders or community members witnessing these really disturbing behaviors might have interpreted them through the existing framework of witchcraft beliefs. And this could have helped sort of codify the Skinwalker concept as a way to explain these phenomena and provide a response within their cultural understanding. It suggests a really complex interplay between psychology, belief, and historical trauma.
Wow. Okay. So we've really journeyed from the foundational, pretty terrifying beliefs deep within Navajo culture through these chilling accounts of transformation and power, looked at the historical impacts, the modern mysterious hotspots like Skinwalker Ranch, and all the theories trying to explain that, all the way to these important discussions around cultural sensitivity and even potential psychological roots.
Yeah, it's a legend that clearly holds immense power and just layers upon layers of meaning. You can really see that reflected in the depth of these sources were looked at.
It truly is fascinating. It shows how these ancient beliefs about malevolent forces and shapeshifting just persist and intersect with unexplained phenomena today, prompting such diverse attempts at understanding everything from cultural lore to scientific inquiry and psychological analysis. And it kind of leaves you, the listener, with this provocative thought. How do we reconcile the powerful, deeply cultural understanding of something like the Skinwalker legend with all these external attempts to explain or investigate unexplained phenomena through science or even paranormal frameworks? And maybe how crucial is it to respect the cultural context and the sensitivity of such profound beliefs when we explore their presence in the wider world?
A lot to think about there.
Definitely. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.